Do you want your business to grow faster? Are you open to new and out-of-the-box ways to drive revenues and increase value? How do you imagine the most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders double, triple, or expand their businesses tenfold or more? The answer is Deals. This is a weekly podcast featuring conversations with business owners, executives, and leaders as we reveal behind-the-scenes details that give you, our listeners, the confidence to pursue your own deal-driven growth. On this show, we discuss a huge variety of deals, everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions, capital raising, joint ventures, strategic alliances, real estate, affiliate and sponsorship deals, franchising, and more. My name is Corey Kupfer, and I've been supporting deal-driven growth for businesses for over 35 years as a successful entrepreneur, professional negotiator, and attorney. My goal is to help you strategize, plan for, find, and complete deals that will help your company grow faster. Welcome to the DealQuest podcast. Let's get started. DealQuest community, I am so excited to bring you a solo cast this week, and especially because I'm going to be talking about some lessons and experiences from the Entrepreneurs Organization Deal Exchange Conference that I had the blessing and honor to be the chair of for the second year in a row. We had that conference in September, so last month from when you'll be hearing this. So first of all, Deal Exchange is a community within Entrepreneurs Organization. Many of you know and have heard me talk about EO, 19,000, 20,000 members worldwide, chapters all over the world, chapters in every major city in the U.S. And this is a subset of EOs who are interested in gathering to talk about how to grow their business through deals. And it's all types of deals, like I talk about on this podcast, right? I won't even get into it, right? It's capital raising, M&A, licensing, joint ventures, strategic, all that stuff, right? Any of you listen to this podcast know what this podcast is about. The Deal Exchange Conference is very similar in that we bring people together who are interested in learning about, and not only that, but supporting each other and being successful in deal making of various types. And I've had the pleasure of being involved in the leadership committee for the conference for the last, 4 years. The last 2 years, I've ran it, not only the conference, but I've also chaired the community, been the community lead for the community of deal makers in EO. And it's been really phenomenal. And putting together this conference, obviously with an amazing team. First of all, I mean, the reviews were stellar. And I don't say that to pat myself on the back. I'm just saying that the people we had there, the speakers, the activities we had was so well received. And I got so much out of it, even though I was running the thing, hosting, interviewing people, whatever. And a lot of the, times like that, you can't really absorb the content. But I really personally got a lot of lessons out of it. I want to share some of them with you around deal making. I also want to shout out some of the people, you can check them out independently. And I'm going to shout out who are involved in this and were phenomenal speakers and great value to the participants. And a couple of these folks, well, at least one of them I've had on the podcast already. I'm sure I'm going to have at least one or two more on the podcast at some point. So this is just going to be a little piece of the value I got. So I want to start out by talking about how we kicked off the conference. And we kicked it off actually with one of the two deal speed networking sessions that we've done. We used to do one last year. When I first shared it, we had gotten feedback that people got so much value out of those that we added another one. So we started off with a roundtable version. Later, we did this more typical sort of speed dating kind of where one row stays, face-to-face, one row stays one-on-one, you go down the row. But without getting too far into this, the whole concept of it is for somebody to have a couple of minutes to be able to talk about their need, right? I'm looking to buy companies in this particular area. I'm looking for joint venture or strategic alliance partners in this jurisdiction, in this area, in this segment, in this industry, in this country. I'm looking to raise capital. I'm looking to make investments in these type of companies. And really, it's gathering the wisdom of the room. I mean, EOs are so well connected, and they have so many great ideas, and they have so many, great contact lists, Rolodexes that we used to call them back in the day. And the concept is that somebody gets to present their need, and then the other person, or if it's in the round table, the other people get to say, okay, great, listen, I have this idea for you, or I have a great connection for you, or let me introduce you to my buddy, or I know somebody who can help you with this. And it's just, despite the fact that we did two of these things, people even want more of it. There's never enough of this. And I think that is something that is applicable. One, if you run any kind of conference, I believe that there's much more opportunity for interactivity and even more so for facilitating spaces for the wisdom in the room, right? Conferences generally are, a bunch of people on stage, main stage breakouts. and they don't create situations where where the wisdom of the audience can really be brought. And this is just an example of that. So if you put conference together, it's ideal, but also a concept even outside the conference space where there's wisdom in your networks. You don't always have to go short. Do a lot of people come to me because this is my world and I do deals. I have a podcast, all right? I close deals as lawyers. Have a negotiating, all that stuff. Sure. But like just in fellow entrepreneurs and business leaders and executives, there's so much wisdom in that room. And one of the things that's beautiful about EO is that we share experiences. That's the whole. EO is not a networking group. You can't actually solicit business. Doesn't mean people don't do business. You can't solicit business. It's a peer-to-peer learning organization. And we share experiences and we share them freely. And we even share them with people who are supposedly our competitors because we don't come from a scarcity mentality. Well, listen, certainly recommend if you qualify to consider joining Entrepreneurs Organization, or if you're not at the million plus revenue level that most chapters, sometimes they're actually even higher, that most chapters have, then, if you're 250,000 above, you can join Accelerator, which is a mentoring program to get you up to the million above. But even if you don't want to do that, or you're not qualified, or you're not in a location that has a chapter nearby, within your own networks, within your industry groups, within your other business owner groups, there's wisdom there. Put together a little mastermind, or have a dinner with a bunch of folks. It could be in your industry, it could be outside your industry. It's amazing the wisdom and network and connections and experience that people have, and have them share experiences around how they've grown their business through deals. How they find key business partnerships, how they find acquisition targets, how they find capital sources that might not be the usual ones, all of that kind of stuff. So that's the first thing that I want to stress. We then hopped into something we call EO Talks. In fact, that was sort of like a pre-thing we did on the first Deal Speed Network. And then the kickoff, where normally I would come on stage, or whoever's hosting the conference would come on stage and welcome people, whatever. We sort of did a cold open, if you want to talk about like Saturday Night Live cold open, right? Meaning that, there's no preface. We go right into something. And one of the things we do in EO sometimes, we have these things called EO Talks, and we had what we called EO Deal Talks at EO, which is in EO, we have something we call 5% shares or 1% shares, right? What it means is that it's the stuff we normally do not talk about, certainly not in a business context with anybody else. It's the deep stories, sometimes, and in these cases, it was often emotional. It's the stuff that we hide in most cases. But that authentic sharing, that deep cut, that willingness to be open provides so much value to people. I can't talk about every speaker, every EO talk, every breakout. There's just too many of them. But I will tell you that opening up with an EO deal talk with somebody who, Lindsay, was nervous, and she crushed it. So it was just an amazing way to open. Then jumped on stage, and the first main stage we had was with a good longtime friend of mine from EO New York, Daniela Landau. Daniela is a very successful entrepreneur in the health industry. She exited a company several years ago with a very nice exit. She's an angel investor. And one of the things that I love about Danielle, and I've really learned from her, is that she does not make angel investments unless she is also an advisor to the company, right? She doesn't want to just write a check. She only wants to invest in companies where she can bring additional value by being an advisor. And that also helps her leverage, right, the check she writes and the investment she makes and the chances of success of the company. So it's an interesting investment approach. Not every angel investor does that. Many actually don't want to do that, but it's something to think about, right? If you're looking at investing in companies, because, it does create a better connection. It does create, maybe you get additional advisor shares in addition to the shares you get or equity you get for the money. So I just wanted to bring that model up. And we had Daniela. So Daniela did a breakout on mentoring as well. And she also headed the Angel Shark panel, which I'll talk about a little later. But the concept of what we brought her up was that she came up with Lauren Castle. And Lauren is the founder of Sweet Lauren's. Now, this is such a cool story because Daniela and Lauren, we sort of revealed it, right? People who don't know, Sweet Lauren's is a company that's estimated to have $120 million in revenue this year, had about 97 million last year, and is in the healthy sweets dessert category, right? Leader, amazing company that Lauren's built. Well, we talked about where she is now. We talked about Daniela's exit, right? The fact that she had exited successfully. Then we asked them, okay, how long did they make? Where were their companies then? Lauren's company was at $83,000 in revenue when Daniela and Lauren met. And Daniela's company was a little further along, but not anywhere near, of course, where she brought it to, grew it to, and then was able to exit at nice multiples. And how did they meet? Well, they met in that EO Accelerator program that I mentioned for companies that now you say, wait, I thought you said EO Accelerator is 250,000. Well, it was a little less strict back then, and somebody pulled a string and got Lauren in because she was such a passionate founder, and they believed that she would grow. And of course she did. And that was Daniela's first significant investment slash, in that case, not just an advisor. She made a decision between an advisor and a mentor, but she was really Lauren's mentor for the first couple of few years that Lauren was in business in a structure. They met every Friday, and they've been wanting to tell this amazing entrepreneurial story for a while. And we had the blessing and the benefit of hearing, I got to interview them, in a little fireside chat format, and got to hear about, their journey together and the benefits of having a mentor, and what mentorship means in the context of investment, in the context of deals, in the context of business and entrepreneurial growth. People loved the session. They were so generous with their time, and I so appreciate Lauren Castle and Daniela Landau for doing that. The next morning, our kickoff speaker was Fallon Fatemi, and Fallon is fascinating. If you don't know Fallon, you gotta check her out. Literally a Silicon Valley prodigy. She grew up in Silicon Valley. I don't mean that figuratively. I mean, she literally grew up in Silicon Valley and raised money very young, is at all these companies. She had one of the first AI as a service companies that was co-founded with Mark Cuban. Okay. And, obviously fascinating stories. I won't go into her whole background, but here was the very interesting thing about Fallon. And she did a talk, and then I got to do a little interview with her afterwards, and then we took audience questions. And one of the things that, we talked about, especially she alluded to it, and then we got into deeper into it when I was questioning her. She has evolved where she's became a mom. She has a child now, and she has come to the place after raising capital in several businesses and being, a young, like I said, prodigy in Silicon Valley, that she's never going to raise capital again. And it doesn't mean that capital raising is bad. It just means that at this stage of her life, with what our priorities are in terms of being a mother, by the way, she's still building businesses and she owns several businesses. It's just that she wants to have control of her own destiny, right? Build things in her own vision, not necessarily have, and I don't want to fully speak for her here, right? Like, because any kind of oversimplification, a summary, would not capture the depth of what she's doing. But the reason why this is important to me is, if you've listened to any time on this podcast, you know that I talk about this concept where I want to reframe what it means to have a lifestyle business, right? And have lifestyle business not be a diss, right? Or something that sort of you look upon, because everybody's got to scale and raise capital or whatever. And somebody just has this little lifestyle business. And I've said that lifestyle business can be raising capital. I talked about my friend who's got this startup, a robotics startup, and he's going through the funding stages. And this is what he's called to do. This is the lifestyle he wants to live, right? And it really, really brought that home, that there was a time in Fallon's life that the lifestyle she wanted, or at least, she thought she wanted at the time. And she doesn't regret that time, was this high flying, let's build a unicorn, let's partner with Mark Cuban, let's raise capital. And now she's at a different stage. And it's beautiful to see people who recognize that and can do the work they need to do to come to a new place around their identity, around maybe other people look for them, about what's important to them in life. And that's something that I always encourage my clients and my friends and EO members and, everybody in the entrepreneurial community and all my listeners here to do, is really get real about what you want and not have these drivers that are external, or that you think should be, or that somebody's telling you, or that because your friends are doing it, right? And Fallon was a great model of that. And it was beautiful to have her. I'm not going to mention, like I said, I'm not going to mention every speaker, but several others. Scott Bushke, we've had Scott on the podcast, and Scott's, phenomenal banker, puts 7-8 deals together. Scott's been a speaker and a sponsor the last couple of years. He's already committed for the next year, and he's a great EO member, and he really runs a great company, Cornerstone. Talking about a number of things, but the thing that stuck with me is this concept of the power of multiple offers. And Scott, listen, we see this all the time. We talk about it all the time. From the buy side, the buyer doesn't want. The buyer wants to call you and say, hey, I want to buy you. Let's negotiate a deal directly. And they don't want to go through a process because, of course, in a process, there's odds are that there'll be competitive bids. And if you're a good company, if you're an attractive company, there'll be competitive bids and they might have to pay more. And my experience, consistent with what Scott was talking about, is that sometimes clients say, oh, I'm afraid to lose this. They're interested in me. I don't want to go through a process. Well, I've never seen a situation where a legitimate buyer leaves the process if you start a process. And I know that's a bold statement. And I'm not saying there aren't times where it might be appropriate. Maybe there's a relationship there already. You know the people. It's a perfect fit. Maybe you've had some sort of joint venture strategic alliance before. But you have to understand that you're probably leaving money on the table. And if you're working with any kind of quality investment banker, they're going to more than pay for themselves. And Scott gave some statistics on the power of multiple offers. And, in his experience, actually, the original single buyer is never the ultimate buyer when he runs a process. Now, I've seen that original buyer be the ultimate buyer when we've run a process. Well, not we, but when we work with bankers who run a process from time to time, but very often they're not. So this concept of getting multiple offers, running a process, working with a professional on the sell side is something that Scott really talked about. And I really believe in that, in most cases, right? In any kind of significant M&A deal that's not maybe relationship based or, obviously eternal succession is different. So that was him. Dave Hirsch was somebody that I did not know at all. And boy, am I happy that we had Dave Hirsch and that he spoke. He talked about avoiding exit wounds. And this is, again, a topic that I've talked about, is this founded depression, is this people who afterwards, even with life or generational changing money, lose their identity and don't know who they are and become either just a little lost or too clinically depressed sometimes. And he gave a bunch of stats. I won't steal the thunder because I'm actually going to be talking to Dave, hopefully get him on the podcast. But let's just say a lot of us have heard the stats on how many companies fail and all this kind of stuff. But the stats on companies that actually exit, and then the ones that exit successfully, and then the ones that are happy afterwards, I basically think Dave's numbers, and could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure when you did all that math coming down, you ended up with 13% of entrepreneurs who exited and were actually happy and satisfied with the deal afterwards. That's a pretty brutal number if you think about it. Now, anecdotally, I feel like my clients have a higher rate. I'm not saying it's because of me, but I could be wrong. I don't know. Like I don't necessarily, a lot of them I have a relationship with and I check in, but not all of them. But, those were his stats. And the point is, whether it's 13% or 33%, or even if it was 63%, which I don't think is that high, there's a huge number of people that are dissatisfied afterwards. So he's got he's got a book out, he's got coaching and all kinds of programs. One of the things that really was fascinating to me, and I want to get into it some more, the concept he got from his friend, he quotes Omo Vu, it's Omovoo, who looks like, I think he's a Kyoto-based coach and whatever, is this concept of that was really fascinating to me, that stood out above all of these statistics that aligned with, and concerns about exiting right and figuring it out afterwards, like who you are, what you want to be, what you're pulling towards, all this, some of the things we talked about in the past. But the concept that came from Omovu that Davis Hirsch has partnered with him on and taken is something called an inner board meeting. And, obviously there's external board meetings with, real other people. The inner board meeting concept was super fascinating to me. And I know most of you listen to the podcast on audio, but if you happen to be on YouTube and see it, he has this product. It's called the board meeting. I'm holding it up for those of you on on audio. It's Lead from the Inside Out board meeting toolkit. And a lot of what Dave talks about is leading from the inside out and that internal work, which of course, anybody who knows me knows I'm up for that. And there's a series of cards, we got a little demonstration. I want to get into these more, but the concept is that you have all of these different voices and life experiences and pieces of your personality. And some of them could be, I don't want to use bad and good, but some of them could be sort of stronger, empowering. Others could be more negative voices in your head. And you got to bring that board of directors together, right? That internal board of directors together somehow, and make sure any deal you do, and this is how, how he tied it in to exit deals, right? And reasoning the satisfaction rate and success rate of those deals and how people look back at them and don't have regrets is by having these inner board meetings and the deal has to satisfy all of these pieces of you, right? So I'm not going to there's a bunch of cards here. But some of them are like, let's say, the problem solver, the warrior, the advocate, the celebrator, the connector, the experimenter, the focused, right? So there's this whole set of cards there that, you might say are sort of the empowering, aspects of a person. And there's a bunch of other cards, another sort of section of this that has like the anxious, the cold, the controlling, the imposter, the perfectionist, the bureaucrat, the thief, the rushed. So, maybe some of those aspects of us that are less empowering, but they're at the table at the in a board meeting, right? And then, there's a third set of cards that is sort of less about our particular characteristics, but it's about, I don't know, like maybe how we feel. Like when you're stuck in your head, you feel stressed. When everything is urgent, money decisions feel heavy. When work gets personal, asking for help feels exposed. So there's different categories. Like a bunch of them are when things keep changing, the ground moved from under you, or you're torn on the right call. And then there's these bunch of ones that are all around when everything's urgent, right? I read a few of those. And then the other category is when work gets personal. And there's different things in that. When you're creating under pressure, right? Feedback can always go sideways, or you need more voices in the room, or and then when you're on the line, you feel invisible, you need to ask for money, you're up against the clock. So there's these various cards, and the thing is, to oversimplify it, at least the way it was demonstrated, you look through these cards and you find the ones in each of those three categories that resonate with you, and then probably gonna have more, and then there's a process where you narrow it down to the ones that are really the core of it, and you get to a point where you figure out who is at the inner board meeting, right? Who is there? Who are those empowering ones? Who are those, maybe more challenging, critical ones? And then, what are these situational ones where you feel, and it's a fascinating filter. I want to work with it more. I always try to do this work with my clients around their why, make sure they're achieving their objectives and whatever. But I think this inner board meeting conversation can be hugely helpful, folks, to really, really figure it out, do some of the things I do with clients, how it's another tool to have them be really, really clear on why, what they want to get out of it, that they're going to be really satisfied. And that can affect whether you do the deal, how you structure the deal, how you prepare for post deal. So I found Dave's talk super, super useful. And I don't want to say like, the other speakers were super highly rated as well. I think just Dave was, for me, less familiar and newer. So I've known Danielle and Lauren for a while. I've known Scott for a while. So in any case, super excited. I thought Dave Hirsch was great. Appreciate all the info and insights and tools from him. And then the other sort of main stage person I'll point out, and then this was interesting for me, thanks to my good friend Josh Levine, who I joke with him. I was kept saying, "What have you done for me lately, Josh? I need something else." It was I don't know, maybe a month or so, month and a half out, maybe 2 months. I might be exaggerating a little bit, maybe a month and a half, 2 months out of the conference, and the learning program had come pretty together. We were in good shape, and I just realized, like, we had one slot, and we are going to put something else in there, and then I just realized, wait a second, we're in LA. I'm running a deals conference in LA. How do I not have a Hollywood deal maker, an entertainment industry deal maker at this deals conference? Right. And that's a little lesson. I think whether it's location or theme or area or whatever, like I think having something that's related to the space, and I'll talk a little bit about, well, I'll say it now. The other thing we did as a social thing is we got people to the Magic Castle, which is, for those of you who are in other parts of the country and don't know, it's a private club with the top magicians in the world who are members. You cannot get access to it without an invite from a member. And to get a private event there, which we did, and to get a lot of people in. I mean, we had people that needed to leave early. We only had maybe 2/3 of the participants. We had about 100 people at the thing. We had about 65 people at Magic Castle. But that was a classic LA experience that people couldn't do on their own. And people loved it. It was phenomenal. We had a private event, and then you get to go in these different rooms and see different magicians. It's a very, very unique space. So we did that on the social side, but I also wanted something on the learning side that was quintessential LA, right? And fortunately, we were able to get Jeff Collins. I mean, a guy that I remember Josh said to me, "What's our budget?" I said, "We have none," right? And so called it a favor, and it was amazing. And Jeff has a production company. He's had several, and he's best known for Dance Moms, which has been this huge, reality show that's been, or unscripted show is what they call it. That's been gone versions all around the world. Has been around for years. Has stayed around for much longer than these shows usually stay around. Not his only accomplishment. He's got a whole list of other ones. But yeah, it was really interesting for him to talk about the Hollywood scene and how to create key partnerships and how to get shows financed and all that kind of stuff. And listen, despite what you hear about Hollywood, despite, the image, and there's certainly a lot of those things, stereotypes you hear do exist in the industry, where Jeff comes from and the best deals still get done based upon relationship, right? I mean, people who are doing it right, that's the way they do it in every industry. And that's one of the things that Jeff, is relied upon is, having great partnerships, having great relationships, being in integrity. And he talked about that, and obviously had some great stories. So we really appreciated that. I mentioned that we had some breakouts. I'm not going to go through every one, but we had one on licensing. Josh, who I mentioned, did one on executive comp and systems or whatever, that incentive to create the right incentives to create value to help your company be more valuable on exit, and not to mention more profitable even before you exit. Cruising Companies as a sponsor, did a great. They do a lot of coaching and growth planning for companies, so they had some great content on helping companies also grow in different ways and prepare and put systems in place and to be able to scale. So again, I won't spend a lot of time on those. My partner Brian Megan ran an international panel that was cool. We had folks from several parts of the world talking about deals in their particular areas, because although it's the conference is more U.S. people than anybody else, there were folks from South Africa, the UK, and Australia, and Mexico, and a bunch of places, Canada. So that was phenomenal. And then we do have this Angel Shark panel where there's actually real pitching and investments. And out of the 5 companies, 3 of them got offers from the stage. And obviously there's due diligence and that kind of stuff. Like any of these, whether it's Shark Tank or whether it's the pitch. I talk about. I did an episode on my love-hate relationship with Shark Tank, where I also talked about the podcast, The Pitch. Hopefully these investments will go through, but there were phenomenal companies, and that's an aspect of Deal Exchange as well, is this sexual pitch panel. And that was, as I said, headed up by Daniela, and Lauren was on that panel as well. And then we had a couple of phenomenal other angel sharks, we call them angel sharks, as well, Naz Amiri and Tanya Yuki, who I got to meet for the first time at the conference. 2 amazing women, successful entrepreneurs, angel investors, and you can definitely check them out if you want. And they all made investment commitments or offers, on the panel. So, I mean, I sort of mentioned this already, but I want to say, so the access is amazing, but the thing that is phenomenal for me is the community, right? I always say a lot of our family members, friends, etc., when we're entrepreneurs, they don't get it. It's not a criticism on them. It's just that they're not entrepreneurs. If they work for somebody, they don't get what it takes, the ups and downs, the roller coaster rides, having to make payroll when things go bad, the figuring it out, the risk levels, the investment, the long nights, whatever it is, right? And that's what I love about being an EO. Well, this, is a subset, right, of EO, of deal makers, right? So now we get to be, in a room for several days, or rooms with several days for EOers that happen to be deal makers. Well, listen, anything that you want to achieve, and if that is deal making, get yourself in communities where there are deal makers, right? Learn from them, contribute to them. It's a huge opportunity. And even for me, who, I spend every day doing deals, and I know a lot about a lot of kind of deals, I'm still learning. And certainly if you don't do this every day, there's a huge amount to learn, and connections to be made, and experiences to be shared in ways that you cannot get from a book. And I will tell you, I do most things by video now, but there's something amazing about being physically in a room with a bunch of people in that environment, especially because in addition to the deal speed dating stuff or whatever, it's at the breaks and the lunches and the breakfast and the dinners where people continue these conversations, get to talk, really connect, learn from other people's experiences, make great connections. I mean, there's investment that happens in deals that are done, joint ventures, acquisitions, things like that, just from people in the room, forget, without even counting people on the stage. So it's a huge opportunity. And again, I want you to think about how you can create some of these communities or be in some of these communities, whether it's EO or something else, around your deal-making journey as you, look do more deals or learn about different kind of deals that might benefit your business. So as you can tell, I was super excited about this. I am now, my partner, Brian Megan, has actually taken over as the EO Deal Exchange community lead from me. His term will be the next 2 years. There were several people applied, so it wasn't like I didn't just hand it to him. He got chosen. So as a firm, we will still be involved in Deal Exchange, and he's made clear. I've joked that I'm retiring, and he's made clear that that's not going to happen. That I'm going to need to be involved. And what I'm really excited about is that we're actually, the first thing is that we're doing is going to Dubai in December to bring Deal Exchange, not a full Deal Exchange, but a Deal Exchange experience day or part of a day to an existing regional conference for EO in that region. It's happening in Dubai. And we already have interest from Cape Town, South Africa, to do one internationally next year, and other people in other regions, Asia, Europe, etc. So we want to expand this and have Deal Exchanges in other places. So I will still be involved in Deal Exchange and focusing on some of the international expansion stuff. Listen, if you don't know that I'm passionate about deals and helping businesses go through deals and helping people learn about deals from being a listener to this podcast, then you haven't been listening. So for me to be able to do that in an organization that I care about, and frankly that I've gotten so much value out of, and for me to sort of bring a place where I can provide a lot of value because it's what I do and it's what I care about, is just been such an honor and a blessing and an amazing experience to me, and it will continue in a different form. I know I got great value out of the conference. I know that there's a limit to what you can get by not being there and experience it, but I'm trying to share with you some of the lessons, and hopefully I would really hope and I expect that some of these lessons will resonate with you and make a big difference for you in your deal-making journey. Until next week, Corey Kupfer signing off.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of DealQuest, where we help you understand how deal-driven growth can be your ticket to freedom. If you are interested in finding out more about my law firm, the services we provide to entrepreneurial and growing companies across industries all over the country, and my partner Brian Megan and I, and my amazing team, just head over to kupferlaw.com. That's kupferlaw.com, and if you want to follow more of my content, head over to my LinkedIn page where I post regularly. I'm Corey Kupfer. Until next week, wishing you the freedom and financial prosperity that I know your DealQuest will bring.